Hello! As you can see, we are not in Melbourne anymore, Dorothy. In fact, Blair and I are on a little trip to Geelong. When I say little trip, I mean it. It's about an hour and a half away from where we live. But Blair and I just really needed a holiday, so we decided to pop down to Geelong for the week. Importantly, to spend some time together, but also to do some birding. We've just arrived at the Botanic Gardens here in Geelong, and it is just beautiful. And while we're here, I thought you and I could hang out a little bit. I could show you around Geelong, take you birding with me, but of course, we need to do some reading as well. And just to stay on theme, I've actually managed to find 2 bird-related romance books that I've brought with me. In fact, I was so looking forward to both this holiday and also the books themselves that I've already started. I've already started our first book, which is called Birding with Benefits. I feel like I almost don't even need to tell you what this book is about. I'm about 20% of the way in. I started it last night. So far, we have been introduced to our main characters, Celeste and John. Both of them are in their 40s, which I'm loving, and they both kind of like a year or two ago got out of long-term relationships that weren't really all that healthy for them. And it seems like we're going to have a bit of like a fake dating trope because basically John has been a long-time birder and he's trying to kind of like get back into the game. So he signed himself up for a birding contest running for 6 weeks. And his best mate Chris was supposed to come along and be his partner, but Chris had to pull out at the last second. And he manages to get Celeste, this person that John has never met, to kind of like pretend to be his girlfriend and be his partner in this birding contest. She, on the other hand, has never birded a day in her life. So it's just really fun so far, both getting to like watch them get to know each other in this kind of like fake dating scenario, which is always a good time. But on top of that, we're watching John introduce Celeste to birding, to the joy of birding. And honestly, that might be my favourite part so far. But anyway, that is enough gas bagging. We're losing the light and we still have a lot of the botanical gardens to see. So let me take you on a birding session. Let's go. Good morning, friends. I am still reeling from the absolutely incredible birding adventure we had yesterday. The Botanical Gardens and Henry's Point were on our list of places that we could go, but we just threw them in yesterday afternoon when we arrived as kind of like little options that we didn't have high hopes for, I suppose. And yet we just had the best time and we saw four 4 lifers yesterday, along with a whole bunch of other birds that, regardless of how many times we've seen before, I'm always still thrilled to see again. It was just one of those birding sessions that dreams are made of, you know? It was so wonderful. So of course, we're up nice and early to do it all over again. We're going to a completely different place this time. However, while I sit here and have my cup of tea, I thought I could tell you a little bit more about this book that I'm reading because I'm having so much fun. So as I said before, this is just like a true romance kind of book, which is not the kind of book that I read very often. But when I do, I tend to kind of like. I don't really very often love a romance, but I'm just having so much fun with this one. I think I mentioned yesterday that one of the reasons I really like it is just the fact that they're a little bit older. Like, in terms of the characterization, they're still very like fun and goofy and youthful in a lot of ways, but you know, they've got a bit more life experience, especially when it comes to love. And that's just something I appreciate in a romance, I think. Anyway, we are now at the point where the birding with benefits is happening. They've basically agreed to move from just like fake dating to like fuck buddies. There's clearly some chemistry between them. They both haven't had sex with anyone in a couple of years, so why not? Why not get down and dirty and have some fun? However, they are both kind of committed to their individual journeys, and they've assured each other that they're not going to catch feelings. This is just casual and only while the birding contest is on for the next few weeks. And we all know how that's going to end, don't we? But anyway, it is a lot of fun. And while I'm enjoying the romance aspect quite a lot, at the end of the day, the reason I am not just kind of like enjoying this book, you know, for what it is, for a romance, but the reason that I'm loving it is the birding element. And in particular, I wanted to read you a couple of lines from early on when they were kind of like first agreed to be birding partners, and John is going to like teach Celeste how to bird because she's never done it before. And she's kind of really thinking about the competition and like needing to get a guidebook, needing to get binoculars, needing to find like 200 birds in 2 weeks. And John just like stops her immediately and he says, if you come out of this thinking birding is about running around with your nose in a guidebook and making lists, I'll be ashamed of myself. Contest or no contest, we're doing this right. We start with discovery and we go from there. And then there's this scene where he like points to a bush and she's like, what? I can't see a bird. And he's like, just slow down. Just look at this branch here. And so she is, and you just see it in the book. You can just feel it, that moment that happens of like just being with a bird for a moment. And she's in that moment, but then quickly kind of pulls out of it going like, what is it? What is it? Tell me what the bird is. We need to put it on our list. And he just says, just watch it. Worrying about making the identification is going to stop you from really seeing the bird. And so she just stops and watches it for a moment. And she has a realization that apparently birding was a whole body experience. So it's just like, I'm liking the romance, don't get me wrong, but it is all that birding talk and like the description of birding and like the emotional feeling of being a birder that it's just capturing so perfectly for me. And I'm just having so much fun. I could not have picked a better book to read on a birding vacation. And speaking of, it is time for us to head off on our next birding adventure. I can't wait. Let's go. we're just chilling out here on the balcony, and I hope it is not too windy. Anyway, I've had a shower and Blair is getting ready. We're going to head out for dinner, and we were thinking we might, if we're feeling up to it, sneak in like a little bit of a late afternoon birding session, maybe after dinner. And I wanted to let you know as well that I have finished our book. I had a lot of fun. I'm not much of a romance reader, you know that, but for what this book was, I thought it was a lot of fun. Like I mentioned, I do really just like that they're a bit older. I like that we explored them, or we watched them kind of exploring their own independence and wanting, particularly Celeste, our female main character, that push and pull between having a connection with John, but also wanting to maintain her independence after being married and kind of losing herself in being a wife and being a mother for so long. And even the third act conflict, which is probably my least favourite thing about romance as a genre. I mean, you felt it coming. It was a little bit annoying, but for a third act conflict, it wasn't too bad. And it was resolved in a reasonable amount of time, I felt. And with a good amount of emotional payoff, you know? So I just had a lot of fun, and ultimately, I think it's pretty obvious to me, I hope it is to you too, that this is like a good, fine romance, but I think what made me love it was the birding elements, which were definitely more prominent in the first half of the book than they were the second, but like I loved watching them go on their little birding adventures. It was so fun. It was just what I want to be reading. So if you happen to know of any other like fiction books that feature prominently birding, it doesn't have to be the main storyline, but you know, relatively prominent, please tell me, because I want more of that in my life. Now, I do have another birding romance book that I found. I literally know nothing about this except for the fact that it's called The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, and it's by India Holton. Now, India Holton I have read from before. I read The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, and I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And then I read the second book in that series, which was The League of Gentlewomen Witches. I hated that book so much I DNF'd it. So colour me very surprised that I am even contemplating trying another India Holton. But, I mean, Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, it is historical. I think all of her romances are. And also it's a little bit fantasy. So I'm really not sure what to expect. I didn't read the blurb before I bought it. I just got excited, I'm not going to lie. And now taking a look at the blurb, it looks like there's going to be like a contest that's set in the 1800s. And I think, I don't like this language here on the blurb. They're hunting the rarest species. But will these rivals discover something even more endangered than true love? I thought we were going to be watching the birds and observing the birds. If we're hunting them, I'm not going to get along with this book, but I suppose I'll read the first few chapters and I'll let you know how it goes. But first, off to dinner, and then maybe some birding this evening. If you can hear me because I haven't got the microphone, but we just saw a grey shrike thrush, which is mine and Blair's, since we've been doing this, our 100th bird. It was so good, and it just like hung out looking pretty for us for like 5 minutes, so we just got to spend some time with it. I love these moments so much.
probably should have told you this earlier, but we are not morning people. Oh my God. But as you can see, we're getting up with the sunrise most days. In all actuality, we probably should be getting up even earlier to go birding, but we're doing the best we can. As night owls, this is the best we can do. Obviously, I need to make this pretty quick because we do want to head off as soon as possible. But I feel I need to tell you that I'm DNFing the Ornithologist Field Guide to Love. I've read about 50 pages of it, and I just don't think it's for me. There is something about India Holton's like humour around the respectability and like class and gender stuff happening in the late 1800s that is funny. Like, it is funny. If you're looking for like funny historical romance that does not take itself too seriously, India Holton could be an author for you. I think at the end of the day, it's the whole them trying to capture birds, and like we already have watched them like capture and put into cages like the most beautiful birds ever. And also the fact that we're here in the 1800s and it's like these British people traveling around the world to capture birds to bring them back to England. And no, they're not killing them en masse as many British ornithologists did back then, but they are still like doing the whole colonizing shit, you know, like going around stealing birds, putting them in cages. It's just not what I was hoping for, you know. I mean, I'm somebody who yelled at some neighbours recently because they let their dogs chase some galahs. My genre of birding is very much like trying to walk as gently as possible into the areas that we're going and doing our best not to disturb the birds. Like yesterday, Blair had an opportunity to take a really incredible photo, but we knew that in order to do so, we had to get closer, and we also knew that the birds weren't comfortable with us. So we opted not to take the photo and just to leave the birds alone and leave. Sometimes the birds are just as curious and interested in you. Sometimes they're not bothered by you. And those are the moments that I enjoy most. We're in their space, you know? Oh my God, Blair. Look at all the ravens. Oh my gosh. Wow. Anyway, you get my point. It's just not what I'm looking for when I'm trying to enjoy and have a good, fun, fluffy time reading about birding. So I'm DNFing and we are heading off on our next birding adventure. I know this lighting is terrible. I just wanted you to see the sunrise. Let's go. Hey, how much fun did you have birding today?
Lots, but I'm tired as.
Yeah, Yeah, me too. So it is our last evening here in Geelong, which is why we're packing. That does not mean that our birding is over, though. We still have planned to make one stop on our way back to Melbourne. Today, though, was hectic. I can't quite believe how much birding we did. And in the kind of heat that we had today, oh my goodness, we did like a full day of birding. We've just had such an incredible trip. Like, I was hoping that we might find 5 new birds that we'd never seen before. I think we're at like 13 or 14. Not to mention that yesterday, I mean, you saw us find our 100th bird that we have, tracked in the 5 months that we've been doing this. So a pretty big milestone. It was very, very exciting. Today, though, was exciting in its own right. We went to 4 different locations, which honestly was a bit too ambitious. We were absolutely exhausted by the end. The first spot we went to was just amazing. We had such a beautiful time there. We saw literally thousands of ibis, both Australian white ibis and the straw-necked ibis, and just seeing them in their natural habitat, because like the white ibis in particular is kind of like, it's a bit of a joke bird here in Australia. It's kind of like colloquially known as a bin chicken because so much of their wetland habitat has been destroyed that a lot of them have started moving into cities and they scavenge in bins. And so I think in particular, just like really getting to watch them in their natural habitat honestly was kind of emotional for me. Like, they were just so graceful and beautiful and in such big numbers. It was just such a special thing to witness at sunrise. After that, we went to another wetlands kind of area, but it's a bit more of like a conservation area, I think. And when we first arrived, we thought it was just a dead end and like we didn't know where to go. Lucky for us though, some folks pulled up just as we were about to like pack it in and leave. Some folks pulled up and I mean, one stepped out with binoculars, another stepped out with a camera, and like immediately we knew that these were birders. So we introduced ourselves and it turns out that like we recognized their names from eBird, from like the surrounding areas, and they showed us some incredible spots. In particular, they took us to one spot where we found another lifer, the black-fronted dotterel, which is a bird that I've been wanting to see for ages. They're so cute. They're so tiny and they're just adorable. And there was like 15 of them just like hiding away in this secret little spot that we never would have known about. And it was truly a treat. Afterwards, we decided to go to one of those like arcade game places. It wasn't time zone, but something similar. We played some Dance Dancer Evolution, which I'm terrible at, but I just love so much. And then we also did some of these like silly little photos, which I thought were going to print out really small and cute, but ended up printing out on this like A4 page. They're like supposed to be cute Polaroid things, but like it's just massive. But I mean, look how cute we are. We're so cute. Anyway, as for reading, I have started Conversations with Birds by Priyanka Kumar, and I'm like 50 pages in. There are some truly beautiful illustrations throughout this book. Basically, it's kind of like one of those nature writing cross memoir kind of books, I'm getting the feeling. And if I was upset about the Ornithologist Field Guide to Love, our previous book that I DNF'd because it was talking about like hunting birds. This book is almost the entire opposite. Like, to the point where in this book, she's basically anti-life lists. Like, she's talking smack about people who just like go out to look for birds just to add them to a list, which I mean, like, fair if that's not your jam. I like having lists because then I get to keep track of who I've seen and who I haven't. And I like that because it's easy to forget. But anyway, I just thought that was funny that like I really didn't like that other book and now we've swung all the way in the other direction, and I do much prefer this. And although this book is covering a lot of different topics, like I mentioned, one of the things that she's kind of touched on in the latest chapter that I've just read, like people who love nature but then don't care about nature, like how weird that is. And she says here in this last chapter that I've just read, how is it that we can love birds and obsess over our bird lists, I sometimes wondered, and not be attentive to how bird habitats all around us are being fragmented or overgrazed or paved over with concrete. It's just kind of mind-boggling that you can say you care about birds but then not actually care about birds, So I really liked her exploring some of that in that last chapter. Anyway, I think that is more than enough chatting for this evening. Like I said, even though it's the last night here, our birding adventures are not over. We are planning to get up nice and early tomorrow and head to one last stop on our way home. So I'm going to go to bed and I will see you in the morning.
So we are at Serendip Sanctuary in the bird hide overlooking one of the wetlands. And Serendip Sanctuary is a really interesting place. It's not quite what I was expecting in some ways. Like, there is clearly an awful lot of wildlife here that come here because they've created like some really great habitat for the birds and kind of rehabilitated a bunch of previously farmland. But equally, there are some kind of like more zoo-like elements to the sanctuary. For example, the kangaroos that we saw, they are captive. And also, and probably the thing that kind of made me have some feelings is the brolga. I have never seen a brolga before. I've always wanted to see a brolga like in real life. They're just so beautiful, such incredible, incredible birds. And then the second we walked in and saw that brolga in that enclosure, like, yes, it's open air, but like, I just knew, like, you just look at that brolga and you know it's a captive bird. And it just made me sad. It made me sad for the bird. It made me sad that that's the first time I'm seeing a brolga when I thought we were coming here to see wildlife, you know. Luckily, we did actually get to chat with one of the park rangers here. He was really lovely. I forgot to ask his name. And I asked him about the brolga, and he said that, yeah, this used to kind of be a little bit more like a zoo in some ways. And they did have a lot more birds that essentially were captive, and including bustards and more brolgas. And the way that they keep them captive is by clipping their wings, capturing them and clipping their wings every 6 months. And that's something that it seems like the sanctuary is moving away from. They're moving more towards like creating really great habitat for wildlife to come to. But at least for now, they still have one brolga that, yeah, its wings are clipped and it's captive. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to share some of my complicated feelings. This sanctuary is not quite what I was expecting. I'm not looking for a zoo, you know. I didn't come here to see captive birds, and that is just not what I'm interested in doing as a birder. I bird because I want to, I don't know, watch and witness beautiful creatures in their native habitat, not to just see them for the sake of seeing them, you know. We're home and reunited with our lovely little Ollie. Thank you, Mum and Dad, for taking care of her for the week. So if you have made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you enjoyed spending some time together away in Geelong and looking at all the pretty birds. Not that this is the only measure of success, but just in case you were interested, we saw, I think, 86 different kinds of birds while we were in Geelong, and 22 of those were birds we had never seen before. So it was very, very exciting. Obviously, there were quite a lot of birds that we hadn't seen before at Serendip Sanctuary, but I mean, I know I filmed that little clip just after I'd spoken to one of the park rangers, and he assured me that only the brolga was the only bird that was captive, which upset me enough, but I kind of understood it as like a transitional phase for the sanctuary. All I know is that my experience there was
not what I was looking for. I was so happy though that we decided to go to the Yuyangs instead. That was just a really, really special way to end the trip. Not only are the Yuyangs beautiful and like climbing that rock and just getting that incredible view, including seeing 2 wedge-tailed eagles, amazing. And one of the very last things that we saw was that incredible speckled warbler, another bird we have never seen before, and we just got to watch it for literally 15 minutes, hopping around within like 2 meters of us. Like I was holding my breath and I was like starting to cry just from like how incredible it was and how still I was trying to stay. So I left quite a lot of that in because it was just one of those really, really special moments. And I feel lucky that we caught it on camera. Anyway, I don't want to make this outro too long. Again, thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end. Of course, a big thank you to my lovely Patreons, and especially big thank you to Livia and Lynette Brown. And I will see you next week for probably at least a little bit more of a usual video. I don't even know what usual videos here are anymore, but I'll see you next week. Until then, happy reading, happy birding, and so much love. Bye. Can you wave, Ollie? Can you wave? Good job, darling. Good job. I missed you so much.